Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy, sir. How are you, my love?
Kia ora, Pat. I am good.
Having a good night? Having a good day?
Oh, Jesus. I forgot I had YouTube on another window.
Oh, you got the
So
delay.
I just blasted. Yeah, I got the delay. And my brain broke. So that was good. Yes, last day of work for me for the week. Planning to go to a gig straight after the show tonight.
Nice.
Darts play at the Crown Motel.
Nice.
Hotel.
Whatever.
So yeah, I haven't been to a gig for a while, so it'd be good.
Since the US, have you been at all this year in New Zealand?
Yeah, actually, probably that's true, which is embarrassing. But yeah, two shows to go to this week. I'm going to go and see Darts at the Crown, and then Freddie Fudpucker at a new venue in town called Pearl Diver. So I feel like I'm a social animal.
This makes me laugh. Pam just says, "Hi, Pat." Hi, Pam. It's like, just there's this little thing between me and Pam. We're just saying hi to each other, just the two of us.
Hi, Barbie.
Now you watch also hi Chewy. Hi Chewy. Okay, listen, let's not mess around tonight. Let's get into things. It's been a busy old day. Chewy probably freaked out a bit before I came down because normally I'm in here first, but I thought I'd tell you, Chewy, I got in here at 8:58. Would you like to know why?
Why?
Because at 8:55 I was watching the final episode of Is It Cake? And I had to wait and see who the overall winner was, and I couldn't leave. So at 8:54, I was still watching Is It Cake upstairs with people. And if I had left, then they would have wanted to play to the end. So they would have seen who won. So I had to stay. So I
thought you were dead, Pat. I was worried. I was going to do a welfare check.
Hey, let's do this. Thanks so much to our patrons. We've had some new patrons joining on in the last couple of days. Our lovely, lovely people, and our people and our animal people, the Meow Collective in there as well. Everybody who's a part of us. We've also got several new people. Sonia Hannon's in there, Dark Fella's in there. And we've got on this wall, I believe Ian Fraser upgraded. Lee. We'll go with that. And Hannah Reid, I believe, are also new. So thank you all for being a part of what we do. It does really genuinely make a difference. We're going to have a bit of a target. We'll talk to you more about that next week because we're getting quite close to me being able actually to turn this into somewhat of a job rather than a kind of a thing we do on the site. It's not that far away, and the patrons are the ones. And when you straight away say, well, what about you? Well, I kind of do all the other day-to-day grind and editing and that kind of stuff. But we're getting really close to this almost being able to pay for itself. Like, honestly, we are, all thanks to the patrons. So we're going to go on a bit of a crusade next week to tell you a bit more about that. But for tonight, this is what I wanted to show you. Ready for this, Joey? Now, we have about 200, just a smidge under, paid patrons. You guys are amazing. It's a big number, right? All of these people, right? All of these lovely people on and there's another person who signed in today about an hour ago who's not on the board. You'll be on Monday. Now, you ready for this, Chewy? I'm going to show you our first patron billboard. Our first one, that was this style. There were probably ones before that, but the first one was about 13 months ago. And I'm just showing you this again. Look, see, this is all these people who are supporting what we do. You see all those people? All those lovely people? There's about 200 of them. You ready? This is the people who were doing it about 30 months ago. That's it. I mean, I'm not saying that's it like it's a bad way, but there's about 30. Some fabulous people. Some of those people still with us tonight. Like, still with us on the patron pages. But it's grown from that 13 months ago. You guys gave me a ton of problems, making me figure out how I'm going to change that to that.
Patron Tetris.
Patron Tetris. And we're actually getting to that point again. Yeah, there's this thing in Photoshop that you can quite easily change the spaces between and what I've actually had to do with with these ones here, the coffee runners, I believe that font is about 20, but the space between them has got to 17 because I've had to pick it, making it a bit tighter and a bit tighter and a bit tighter and a bit tighter just to fit everybody in. You do notice, though, just a little side, you do notice there's lots of room for executive producers. Just saying, there's lots of room there for executive producers. You know, we could have a couple more of those. It wouldn't be such a bad thing. But yeah, we'll talk to you more about that next week. And look, I guess from me to you, from us to you, a huge thanks. People that were with us sort of on day one and people that are with us today. This is also indicative, not necessarily just of the patrons, but of the growth in general we have found ourselves, the growth in general, because, with the growth comes more patrons. So it's indicative of the growth we've been seeing. It's indicative of more people wanting to get behind us. And we hear it all the time, guys. We hear there's nothing else like you out there. And we know. And if you're someone who's a bit of a lurker, welcome. You're welcome to lurk. If you've been around for a while and you're kind of going, well, I think it's probably time to help these guys out in any little way we can, then maybe tonight you might consider. Or maybe if you're watching this on demand, you might consider. Because we're all about it. And we're all about keeping going with this as long as we can. I'm not saying that like in a threatful way, like we're going anywhere, but we're getting real close in the patronage only to being able to make this sort of pay for itself. I mean, it might be a couple of grand a month off, but actually compared to the start, it's getting really close. Really close. So I wanted to share that with you. Maybe it is a bit of a pitch, but more so than a pitch, it's also just wanting to show you guys where we're at and say thanks to you, where we've come from and where we've got to. Cool. Anything you want to add to that, Chhour? I know you don't really handle that kind of stuff. It's sort of back.
No, I just sit back and I'm amazed. I'm amazed every time we put it up, and I guess humbled because I mean things aren't easy at the moment for the money for a lot of people, and for someone to put their money literally where their mouth is and sort of back us is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly how we feel. We don't take it for granted, whether it's $5 or $250, which are kind of from the not bottom, but the least to the most significant investment. We take none of it for granted because, there's $30 or $45 people there. You put them all together, it just makes a significant difference. So there you go. Okay, Chhour, I wanted to show you something, and this has been brought to my attention by the lovely Calvin Morgan, and I think that you will either enjoy this a lot or you will scream your head out. A convicted wife beater, Avi Yemeni, spoke to another convicted vandal during the week who wanted to paint over, who did actually end up being part of the team that painted over the rainbow crossing in Karangahape Road, and they had a lovely little chat about it, how it was a really good thing to do, and he'd do it again. So let's play this for you.
What would you say to critics, whether in New Zealand or around the world, that look at what you did and say you deserve the punishment? In fact, you deserve more, possibly even the jail time, because it was a blatant act of hate.
Well, I'll obviously say to them that it wasn't an act of hate. As I said, it was, I have gay friends, I have gay family. This was an act of love for my children.
Yeah, I'm not racist because I've got some Maori friends. I'm not homophobic because I work with some gay people.
To stand up for their futures, to stand up for the protection of their innocence.
Is it the gay sexualization that you guys have a problem with, or would you have a problem if it was also, I guess, Pornhub painting something on the streets?
It's just it's the perversion and it's the blatant shoving in our faces of this agenda, I suppose, that we've had enough of. So taking that stand is what we sort of had to do to bring it to light.
$16,000 first conviction. Do you regret what you did?
Look, I think for me it's more important to make the stand, to make my beliefs known and what we stand for known. The future of my children depends on it, and there's no price I can put on that. So, for me, would I do it again? Absolutely.
So my first thought when I saw this, Chhour, was I wonder if there's any conditions on his discharge that if the judges say, I'll do this again, fairly obvious that no lesson has been learned here, that I just wondered if that was reported to the judges or to the justice system, could that make any difference? Because, you know, I always think that when people get discharged, now I'm not sure whether it was discharged without conviction, because some of the stories said pleaded guilty. And if you plead guilty, that implies you've been convicted. But either way, if it has been a discharge without conviction officially, that normally comes with things like, you know, agreeing to what you've done and being sorry for it and repenting of it, so to speak, to use the Destiny Church term. If you just say, yeah, I'll do that again, I just had that little wondering, is that a problem if anyone was to share that up the chain, if you know what I mean?
Absolutely. God, Avi Yemeni is just a world-class piece of shit.
Yes.
And just, yeah, as you said, convicted wife beater, a really weird mix of a Zionist Nazi. It's just super. He's a super weird dude. And the fact that Destiny seems absolutely fine to partner up with him and have a chat to him and invite him over is just wow. Could you tell us more about your organization, please? It's very muddy. But yeah, I was thinking that as well. You know, if you go into court and go, oh, I'm very sorry, I won't do it again, and then run off to some dickhead's podcast and go, yeah, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Just their Destiny's position, like, I'm just sick of them ramming it down our throats. What? Yeah. By putting a coloured crossing on the road?
Yeah.
By showing you that these people exist.
It's the same.
Your existence is a perversion.
It's the same level right now. If people were to say to you that you were ramming down their throat Palestine because there's a flag in the background, that's about the level of it. It's like, you choose to be here, you're in here, you're choosing to be a part of this, you know, you're choosing to be in that. It's nonsense. Ramming down the throat would be literally being outside Destiny Church having a rainbow party every Sunday morning and evening. Not that I'd condone that. Well, actually I would. That would be ramming it down their throat. That would be actively targeting a group with your message. And, you know, who would ever want to actively target a group with a message? Surely we have to think about Destiny Church and them not targeting a group with a message, because they'd never do that, would they, Chewy? Target a group with a message. They'd never ram their message down other people's throats. So, you know, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolute brainworms.
That was just a quick one to get everyone angry, because that's what we do, rage baiting. Now everyone's in here and they're pissed, so we're going to stay for the night. I've got a bit of a question for you. Now, I haven't seen this whole story, but part of tonight's stories was based on something in Stuff or on stuff.co.nz, and I took a screen grab of it. The story here, so this is off their website maybe 3 or 4 hours ago. The story here that I'm circling that reads, government releases new school sickness guidelines saying kids with mild cough or headache should attend. So, of course, being the social justice warrior that I am, I fly off the handle and I write sick kids to school in my bio for this. And then I start to do a bit of research on it, and I don't know whether they did say that or not. And if they didn't say that, I think that Stuff has pushed it a little bit too far. So, for example, News Hub. Sorry, I've been saying Stuff. Sorry, pull that back. I mean News Hub. It's on the News Hub story. It was News Hub website. So, apologies, Stuff. Because if you go to the story with that tag went to, and you put, for example, headache in there, HEAD, nowhere is there the word headache. I watched this whole press thing. At no point did they actually say in this press conference, guidelines saying kids with mild cough or headache should attend. Now, maybe, as they say in this story, there is a place on the Ministry of Health, their name, to go on. Maybe it says it there. Maybe that's fair enough. But I just had the little ponderance, because we're fair here, right? And if it doesn't look quite right, we want to point it out there. And saying that, this government is definitely saying, you know, that they should attend school if they've got, like, you know, here we go. For example, a child may have mild hay fever. Hay fever might display some symptoms. That doesn't mean it's unsafe for them to be at school. So there is definitely the idea of, well, you could come to school anyway, even if you're feeling a bit off. But all I'm saying is, I'm not sure whether the headline from News Hub says kids with mild cough or headache should attend I'm not sure or not whether it's exactly. So I guess what I'm doing is a little bit of a mea culpa, saying because of their headline, maybe my headline's a bit misleading. Maybe. I'm just being honest with you about it. But I wanted to play this part of the conversation, Chhour, because what they're going to start doing is a traffic light system, right? The traffic light system means green means all the kids are okay. Orange means, they're having a little bit of attendance issues, and red means it's time for us to get involved. I'll just play a little bit of this as to what they did say.
You'll also see a traffic light system introduced where kids who are attending regularly are green. Kids who have some attendance issues are orange to be dealt with by the school. And those who have persistent non-attendance are deemed red to be dealt with by the Ministry of Education. There's been a huge amount of emphasis and coverage of this issue in recent weeks on the place of fines in government policy. I can understand why there's a lot of emphasis, because it's something that certainly generates discussion, but I think it needs to be placed in the context of a wider range of initiatives the government's taking, and that apply if you end up in a red traffic light situation, having had multiple attempts to get you to comply and go to school, and a judgment by those involved that it's not a case of can't, but actually a matter of won't. That is the circumstance in this wider policy environment where fines become relevant.
So that's the basic summation of it. Now, they are talking about fining. He's trying to explain it away where he's basically going, don't worry, it's only at the nth degree. But my question, Chhour, was this system, that if they're green, it means everything's okay. If they're orange, it means the school needs to deal with it. And if they're red, it means the Ministry of Education needs to deal with it. My first question, Mr. Seymour, with the reductions you're making of staff in the Ministry of Education, how do you think they are going to man these new rules and new jobs you've got for them to do? Chhour?
Yeah, classic stuff. They're just going to cut out the workers and expect them to do more. They're going to task them with more. So very predictable. I also love the fact that they've decided to use the traffic light thing when we were talking about COVID positioning and that sort of thing. Traffic lights were confusing to most New Zealanders, but now it's fine. And the absolute irony of someone who purports to head a libertarian party just loves to come in with this authoritarian, and parents actually don't know what's best for their kids, and needs the involvement of the state.
There was also a story I saw today that Judith Collins went on a certain platform. I didn't actually listen to the article, but a particular platform talking about the threats that politicians receive and how they've gone up. The same people talking about this that a year ago, all the female MPs in those parties were like, well, it doesn't really happen to me, when Jacinda was getting them. Today, Judith Collins is talking about the danger. So it's the same sort of thing, Chhour. Today, they are taking it seriously. Today, they are doing something which they poo-pooed 12 months ago. Poo-pooed. And it just screams a little bit of the hypocrisy we're going to need to get used to with this current government.
Yeah, as part of that, I was reading that they have tightened security at Parliament. Now, my reading of what they were saying about the threats that MPs and that are facing, they're not facing it at Parliament. Parliament's got security. You can't just walk in off the street. The threats that MPs have been facing is online rhetoric, emails, phone messages, and the chance that someone's going to turn up to your electorate office and assault your staff.
Yep.
That's what they're worried about. Threats being made to their homes.
Yeah.
And I just find, I don't know if it's fair to link these two things, but they're tightening up the public getting into Parliament at the same time that they're loosening up lobbyists getting into Parliament. Just seems to be an odd juxtaposition.
Very good. There's super chats that have been coming in there. Let's just get them up now. JK says, if a child hasn't had a fever for 24 hours or had medicine to reduce their fever in that time and only have a mild cough, headache or runny nose, blocked nose, they can go to school. Okay, so TV1 new government advice. So JK's just giving us up from TV1. Ironic that we were using the TV3 story, and they didn't have any of that information, or the News Hub story, they didn't have any of that information, although they had the headline. So there you go.
But
And you know
tho-
what it's
those
about? It's just about
symptoms-
it's just about this government being able to tick a box saying, see, our attendance is better. And I wonder if there'll be some parents out there who maybe don't have the same kind of mongrelness about them that some of us have, that go, oh shit, I better send my kid to school. The government said so. You know, it's this mandating you do what they say when they, again, have just spent, a year trying to get elected, talking about how bad mandates are, Chewy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when we talk about those symptoms as well, headaches, runny nose, maybe a little bit of fever and a cough, that's basically the symptom to every transmissible virus out there, including measles.
Yeah.
And I'm going to highlight measles because one of the unfortunate side effects, hangover effects of COVID and the discussion of vaccines, vaccinating children has been trending down for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's a significant of the portion that are not up to date with their vaccinations. And measles, you know, we've had a couple of scares over the last couple of years of measles outbreaks. And I don't think they've considered this.
I decided to go to, and I haven't looked at this, right? But I decided to go to Whataora's website to see if I could get those conditions. And guess what the first story is, Chewy, when you go down? Measles, locations of interest.
There we go.
We are starting to see more measles in Aotearoa. Get the latest information about locations where you may be at risk and how to protect it. First story. So there you go. That just goes to show exactly what you're talking about.
Make polio great again.
See, you got to be careful saying that, because my dear old departed dad was one of those people who in 1948 caught polio. So that's why transmissible diseases is one of those things that I'm a little bit passionate about. And that was something that impacted him for the rest of his life. And what people don't think about, it was something that impacted his whole family the rest of his life. Now, he was great. He still played tennis and he played cricket and he was great, but there was lots of things he couldn't do because he basically had one part of his body that was paralyzed since he was 8 years old. Incredibly successful man, and incredible things he did do physically even with that. But polio's gone. But the way that we look at what some people are doing with their kids at the moment, maybe she'll come back. It's a rebirth of polio.
Yeah, a good friend of mine overseas in the UK, his dad has been wheelchair bound the majority of his life because of measles. Wow. Like, this is something that we beat measles. Yeah. We had that shit in it back in the box. We don't need you anymore. We've worked out with science how to get rid of you. And now, because of a whole factor of reasons, but basically some people shouldn't be on the internet, it's coming back. Yeah. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Before we move on to the next story, thank you, JC and the Pigeon Cats for a very generous super chat there of $20.
Good band name.
They don't understand the issue. The idea we can delineate kids that can't or don't want to go to school is nonsense. There is always a reason that is real to the kid, whether it be mental health, bullying at school, etc. Yeah, so maybe there's other reasons as well. The kid's not going to school. Now, look, I mean, as a parent, I've always been pretty lackadaisical. If my kids all like school, they all had a good time. One of them still does. So if my kids have ever gone, I want today off school, Dad, why? Oh, I'm just tired. I have sometimes said, yeah, that's fine. Other times I've said, no, that's not, because I agree with JC. I think mental health days are valid for adults. If they're valid for adults, why wouldn't they be valid for children from time to time? And look, I'll say it again. Remember, this current government has spent, its whole lives talking about the nanny state and talking about you can't tell parents what to do and all this. And then they get in and they do things like ban cell phones in primary schools. In other words, taking that away from what the parents want. And they're now putting instructions out there on when and how you must send your child to school. It's like, no, sorry, no. And if I had a kid living rurally, for example, and I needed that kid to have a cell phone, I would be sending a cell phone to school with my kid. Don't care what the parent says. Even if they had to put it in a box or something once I got to school, as a parent, if I wanted that to be in my child's bag, it would be in my child's bag, no matter what the government said.
Yeah, it's a blunt instrument. It's a blunt instrument from the government that says parents don't know what they're doing and the schools don't know what they're doing. We have to tell them what to do.
Yeah. Yep. All right. This kind of flows on a little bit because it's talking about kids. This is actually from yesterday's news, but I want to play you a little comment from Karen Chhour, who wants to sell the idea that fewer people working in the ministry is going to be a better outcome for children. And then we're going to go on to a couple of stories today, which is the reaction to the job cuts.
But OT and the minister in charge say the changes are actually to focus on children.
We're refocusing OT back to their core focus, which is our children and our young people, and making sure that our frontline services are resourced and have the tools that they need.
I think if they were really focused on children, they would have spoken to young people about what those changes are going to be, and they would have consulted with the agency that represents the voice of them.
The Prime Minister adamant it's all about getting rid of bureaucracy.
When you talk to New Zealanders, they do not want to see waste in our public services. They want to know that dollars are being spent and deployed towards the frontline services.
These cuts are reckless, and the government is doing so with no plan.
Big changes that could have big implications.
There you go. So that was from yesterday's story, but I did definitely want to get out this idea of, because we've been asking this for days now, and I've been putting it all over Twitter. You know, if you've got 50 staff that aren't getting you the objective you want, how is 40 staff then going to do it for you? It's been catnip to the I guess the anti-fascists out there saying, you know, look at Twitter, so much better now. It's only 600 people. It was 6,000 people. So much better, and and let me say this again. We said this last night. I'm not actually fighting for more people working in government departments. I'm fighting for the best outcome for us. If that's more, let's have more. I do and have had this conversation with many people over my sort of media career. I don't believe big government is better. I don't believe, like libertarians do, that smaller government is always better. The truth is, better government is better. And there might be times where you know, departments need more people to be able to function. I'm sure there's times where fewer people would be able to function better. However, what we're not being told by this government is why they're dropping the numbers and how that will make this better. We're just being told, can't afford it, got to go. Got to live within your means. Remember, at the same time, shall we say it together, they're giving $3 billion to landlords.
To landlords.
Yours, sir.
So I'm not going to sit here and say that Oranga Tamariki is a perfect government organisation. I'm not going to say it's got no problems. It's historically got a lot of problems. But we have some dreadful stats when it comes to kids in New Zealand. And I can't imagine a single case where having less people doing that job is going to create better outcomes. Mm-hmm. Managing a child that's in a situation bad enough for OT to be involved is not a manpower light thing. You need caseworkers that understand the particular circumstance of the child, and that could be a multifaceted array of challenges around this kid. And by the same token, fixing it could involve many different organizations, many different people. And if you have a person that knows this kid and knows their situation and is managing through fixing it, you need people to do that. You can't have someone that say they had 5 cases that they were managing in their week, right? 5 people, 5 families, 5 alternative carers, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And now their workload has doubled, tripled. There's more kids. Or the same kid has to be passed through different people's hands because the workload isn't being managed. You tell me if that outcome is going to be better for the kid. Yeah. You know, if they have to be uplifted and put with a different carer, is the appropriate amount of time going into vetting whether that's an appropriate situation to drop that child into.
Yeah.
You know, the it's one of those things is like you look at what could happen. What's the worst case scenario? Is it something that you can wear? Like if this kid, we're going to put them with another family member because that's what we should do. Honestly, up against a few deadlines, so we didn't look into it. Very good. And the kid goes into an even worse situation.
Yeah.
You know, can these changes stand up to the justification of another dead child?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic here and say this will cause deaths, but I think there's no.
But it could.
There's no question that there will be at some stage over this term where someone will fall further through the gaps, or someone will have suffer more of an issue, and it could be as serious as that. And if that does happen, then what? Well, this government will go, oh, see the hangover from the last government. We're trying to work through this. And it's like, no, you broke government. You guys broke government.
One of the things with OT as well is, they were going through a generational change under Labour as well. It wasn't just a name change. It was. Do you remember the scandal of kids being uplifted too aggressively?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And that was a real review of like, well, are we doing this in the right way? And I don't think they really found it. They made some changes. They started making more considerations about how that they were doing it and that sort of thing. And that was all coming from frontline staff.
Yeah.
Going, well, this isn't those people, like the true people on the front line. I can't imagine that you would do that job and have a hard heart towards these kids. Like there will be people there that would take a bullet for these kids. And then they're being managed to death, and then to have a new government come in and make that worse.
Yeah.
It's not about the kids.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Peter's given us a new turn. Shitification is the big trend in business and tech. Now it's the case with public services under this government. Is that a term that you've heard before? Shitification.
Shitification. Yep. It's making things worse. Because if something's perfect, then you can't roll out updates on new products.
Yep. Yes.
So you make them a little bit shitty.
Let's have a look at the update from this, because that was the story yesterday, yeah? And then tonight, of course, is the reaction to the cuts. And we're actually going to look at both stories from 1 and 3. They're both a couple of minutes each, but they both kind of give a slightly different perspective. Let's have a look.
A principal says the swathe of education cuts mean people already doing full-time jobs could be working even harder. More than 2,000 roles have now been slashed across the public sector, and despite assurances, there's concern frontline staff will be affected after the minister confirmed losses in regional offices. Laura Frickberg reports.
Regional branches of the Ministry of Education play a key role in supporting schools and students. But now the union says dozens of staff at sites like these could lose their jobs.
That will have a detrimental impact on learning outcomes for children and young people all over New Zealand.
The government has repeatedly said the front line won't be affected by proposed job cuts. But the PSA says cutting the regions is proof it will be, with the Education Ministry's own website describing staff who work there as being part of the front line.
It is very clear from the Ministry's website.
So what's happening is the government is going to determine what the front line is, and they're going to be different to what perhaps the industry determines the front line to be. And so the government is going to re-examine and redefine what the front line is, and then they're going to say, we're not touching the front line. It's like saying, my new car only has 3 wheels, and I'm redefining all cars to have 3 wheels, so I only need 3 wheels, so my 3-wheel vehicle is a car. They're redefining what the definition is, and then they will say, yes, we're falling within the definition, and it'll be different to what the definition was 5 minutes ago. That's what I think is going to happen, Chewie.
That they are axing 87 roles in frontline education.
The Education Minister, though, says the government is planning to add curriculum experts to the regions too.
Anyone who deals directly with a teacher or directly with a child, or those services that support teachers and students, it is my expectation that the reprioritisation will not include those people.
It's very worrying.
But that's not what we're being told. We're being told it will include those people.
The sector, because we're wondering, so does that mean the people who are left in the ministry with full-time jobs have to work harder?
The Education Ministry still won't confirm exactly where the cuts will be, but reiterated around half are empty roles that simply won't be filled. Public Policy Professor Arthur Grimes says the entire public service has increased 32% in 6 years.
I think there's been far too much growth in the higher management levels in the public service in recent years. There's not enough trust perhaps being put in the people below them to actually come out with recommendations that they think are appropriate.
Well, that's something the Finance Minister has asked the Public Service Commission for advice on. Yesterday brought the total number of proposed cuts in the public service to more than 2,000. The question now, which department is next? Laura Frick.
So one of the things I realised, I was talking with someone today, was it with you, Chewy? Have we talked today? I don't know. I feel like I'm always talking to you. Is that actually, if you think about this logically, right, just purely logically, to get rid of staff and operate better means at the moment those staff have to have a negative influence. So I was talking to someone about, a road, like someone building a road, right? And you're building a road, you've got a number of guys working on the road, guys and girls working on the road, and they're building the road and they're laying the asphalt and that kind of stuff. And if there's one slacker in the group and he's only pulling 10% of his weight, that's still something that someone else would have to do if he wasn't there. So what it actually means is to make it more efficient and work better with fewer people is that guy actually needs to go around and be re-digging up stuff and making more work for them to do. Yeah. So unless these people that are going are making, I know it sounds silly, but more work for the ones left over to be doing, then actually, even if they're all slackers and lazy and layabouts, which obviously we don't think they are, that are only doing a half job and a full-time wage or whatever, that's still a half job times 6.5% that has to get picked up by the remaining people. It just makes no sense at all, Chewy.
Imagine if this is like, we need to make cuts, but let's say that the back rooms are fat with people that are just there for the free coffee. Imagine if the government said, we want to free up more funding for the front line.
Yep.
We want to pay the caseworkers and the counsellors more. We want to pay the teachers more, and this is how we're going to do it. Is that what's happening? Was that their pitch angle? Or was it just funneling money to landlords and gutting the public service to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. Because remember, don't believe we can't afford it. We can afford it. We're choosing to prioritise money going to landlords and others over people who are in the back room helping teachers in the front room. In the back room of Oranga Tamariki, helping the people who are helping the kids who need more help than anyone else in the country. They're making a choice.
That's what we can afford just by dropping the promised tax cuts.
Yep.
What can we afford if we go after the people that are hoarding their money at the expense of everyone else they share the country with?
Yeah.
What about what can we get at that point?
You always find a way to get to those 311 families, eh?
I'm never going to forget that.
All right. Now,
I'm never going to forget
this is the same topic, but TV3 or News Hub did a slightly different perspective, which is David Seymour calls for a reality check as public sector jobs cuts spark outcry. Let's have a look what TV3 said about it tonight.
David Seymour is calling for a reality check after the outcry over the latest round of public sector job cuts.
The ACT leader says they're small in comparison to growth across the public service under the previous government. Political reporter Jamie Ensor has more.
Schools out at Porirua College as the government continues.
I'm sorry, I know I'm a scratched record here. They're small in relation to how many the last government put in, but you're still not telling us why the last government's number was wrong and yours is right. You're still not telling us why. You're still not showing us. I couldn't give a flying fig if it was double the last number that before you guys got in. If it was now operating better, that's a good thing. So rather than just saying the cuts are going to be less than the additions were, tell us why National and ACT and New Zealand First plan is better and Labour's was worse, rather than just going numbers bigger, bad, numbers smaller, good. Because that's pretty much all we're getting at the moment, Chewy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
continues its clean out of public service workers, which could include members of the school lunches team.
Well, we know that Māori and Pacifica students are in the lower socioeconomic groups, and the school lunches actually target those groups.
Newshub's also obtained documents showing the Ministry of Education's Te Hure Hanganui team, which supports communities to address racism, is also in the firing line.
Of course!
The ministry won't say which...
Supports it. Did you get the definition? Supports the teams to address racism. They're getting rid of that one.
To address racism is also in the firing line.
Yeah, it's been solved because he was a black president of the United States. Is that right?
We fixed it.
Yeah. Yep. So, of course, that's going as well.
The ministry won't say which roles could go, but changes are designed not to impact students and teachers.
If we don't confront our unconscious bias with a third-party support, because you can't do it on your own, we're not going to be able to do that.
Having public servants sticking their beaks into how people treat each other has made us a more complicated and divided country.
As well
as this current government is sticking their beaks into everything and telling parents how to raise their children. And look, don't come at me with a whataboutism. Well, that's what the left do. I don't care if the left did this and you hated it. It doesn't stop that now. The right is doing this. If the left is all about nanny state and your response is, but the left is more nanny state, it's like, well, I'll give you that point. I don't agree, but let's say you're right. You're correct. That doesn't negate the point that these guys are now doing what they've said to all these other people you should never do. All right. And because these are the guys in power, these are the guys who we look at and critique. We don't go, hey, let's fix that problem that Labor had 16 years ago. We go, hey, let's fix that problem we've got in front of us today that are going to impact us tomorrow and through the next cycle and the next cycle. We can't change what happened. Doesn't mean we give them a pass if they've been doing the same thing. But this government are the ones who have who've said, don't stick your beak in. Libertarians, less government, smaller government. We don't want that. And they're the ones that are telling parents now how to raise their kids, when they're sick, when they're not sick, what they're allowed to have in their bags going to school and not. It's just hypocrisy. And if you can't see it, you're either a moron or you're being willfully ignorant. In other words, you're choosing not to see it, Chewy.
I think every time that Rimmer talks about, the government shouldn't be involved in telling people how to treat each other. It's always this disingenuous argument that racism and division is caused by acknowledging it. Like acknowledging that there are different races and cultures in this country is creating division. Recognizing that there are past wrongs that perhaps need to be righted is racism. And everybody should be treated the same, because that sounds lovely and cuddly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just farcical. It's amazing how shallow his thinking is on this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. He's probably choosing not to go to level 2. It's probably not that he can't. It's he knows what the headline will get, and he knows that those backing him and that those voted for him just want to hear, rah, 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 let's stop all this woke clap track and get on with things. Whilst they at times are doing the exact definition of what they've described as woke, and they are sending out signals, and they are, they're doing all the same things that they're accusing the others of doing, and that's what's frustrating, along with a lot of other things. We'll keep going.
There's 565 jobs at the Ministry of Education. Oranga Tamariki yesterday proposed 447 roles will be lost.
That's a lot of people to be potentially losing their jobs.
There needs to be a reality check here. Everybody's gnashing and wailing about the public service. The reality is it's grown more in the last 6 years, much more in fact than any reduction happening right now.
OT's workforce.
And why is it better to reduce it, Rimmer?
Has grown from under 4,000 in 2018 to just under 5,000 at the end of last year, a 26% increase. It now has about 5,100 permanent and...
I had a look at that actually out of interest. At that time period, it went from about 4.8, 4.9 to about 5.2, 5.3. It's not 27% increase, but there has been an increase. So all these people are going around going, we want the numbers to go back to 2017 numbers of public servants. Yeah, well, even if I gave you that, it would have to be more than that because of the population growth, at the very least. I had some moron on my Twitter feed today say, lesser, the lesser number, fewer people. Fewer people is always better in government. I said, well, that means by your logic, 0 would be the best number. Because if you got to 50,000, then 45,000 would be better. If you got to 45,000, then 40,000 would be better. If you got to 12,000, then 10,000 would be. So in other words, what you're saying, Mr. Moron, is that 0 would be the best way to run government. That means no teachers, no nurses, no doctors. You know, it's just lunacy. It's idiocy is what it is.
Term staff, removing 450 roles takes it back to where it was mid last year. Over at the Ministry of Education, there's been a 55% staffing increase over the past 5 years. Losing 565 roles would return them to pre-2022 levels.
It's justified to spend more money on supporting our most vulnerable children.
The simple number of people being hired doesn't mean people get better results.
The governing parties were elected on a promise to pare back the public service, and they see these job cuts as delivering. The opposition, however, argues that the bureaucratic boost is in line with the public they serve because the population has grown. The public service has grown 32% in the past 5 years, but as a proportion of the total workforce, it's only a very slight increase.
But it hasn't exploded.
So it's not always true that because the population increases, the size of the public workforce has to increase.
And it's likely more cuts are
What
on the
a
cards.
moron.
Jamie Ensor, News.
That's as stupid as saying, just because there's more kids in the school, why does that mean we need more teachers? You don't necessarily see better outcome with more kids in the school having more teachers. Of course you fucking
Well,
do, you
Pat,
idiot.
I'm glad you brought that up because we're increasing class sizes to 55. And that's shitty. So here's my answer.
But
Privately run charter schools.
You're missing something. Though. He would reduce, grow the classroom sizes to 55, and he would take off regulations making the teachers standing in front of those 55 kids less qualified. Got to remember that bit as well.
I'm sure he's going to pivot at some point and go, you know what, overcrowding in schools is diabolical, and we all know that not all of these kids are going to make it in the corporate world. What a lot of these children really crave. What these children crave, Pat, is to return to the mines. We're going to send them to the West Coast and open up the Shane Jones Memorial Coal Pit. And it's going to be filled with all the 14-year-olds that couldn't cut it.
Hang on. We've got to be careful saying this because someone will clip it. But if you say the Shane Jones Memorial Coal Pit, that implies he's no longer with us.
Might be getting a bit ahead of myself. Who knows? Commemorative? Oh, no, that's the same thing. Everybody knows. Look, when Shane Jones pops his clogs, all the racetracks in this country will get renamed.
Yeah.
To the Shane Jones Memorial Racetrack.
Hang on, probably half of them will be for Winston as well. He's done pretty good in the industry as well. In fact, maybe Winston has already passed, and this is the ghost of Winston Peters we're seeing walking around.
Oh, God.
Maybe. All right. Anything in the chat that we want to highlight because we're going to move on?
I must apologise. I haven't been watching the chat at all.
Thank you for your super chat, Nate. Completely unnecessary PSA. Seymour is the worst example of a human. That is all, says Nate. Yeah, that is probably an unnecessary.
It's not new information, but it does bear repeating.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, they say with advertising, repetition means something's important. When you hear something repeated again and again and again and again, so yeah, never stop, Nate, never stop. And also, Mr. Arvids says, is Ian Taylor a part of one of the 311? Wonder what he thinks, how long voting for National. Wasn't he pro-education? I don't think Ian Taylor was in that 311. Ian Taylor's done very well for himself business-wise, and he was one of the team who signed on to that document of wealthier people should be paying more tax. I'm 90% sure he wasn't in the 311. I'm not saying he hasn't done well for himself, but I don't think he's one of them. He's an interesting cat because he's torn, because he's a Labor guy, but he got sick of Labor, and lots of people did. That's why we saw such a landslide. And he's also now writing and speaking about regretting some of the things. He doesn't regret how he voted, but acknowledging that some of the things he voted for, they're not doing. Is that a fair way of saying it, Chewy? We've had him on. So
yeah, we've had him on, and look, I found the chat that we had with him was really enlightening. But then he went and voted. Went and voted for National.
Well, we had him on after he voted, though. We had him on after he voted, so that was already done.
Oh,
and he
did we?
was, yeah, because we had him on when they were doing the letter, and he said that, because I said, this is how my memory tells me this, do you regret your vote? And he said, well, I don't regret my vote because that was what I had at the time and at the moment. But he was kind of saying, but, because I think he had quite a big bee in his bottom about the smoke-free legislation disappearing. He was like, some of the stuff that we're doing is not what I voted for. So he was sort of fencing it somewhat between regretting what he did, but also acknowledging, the negative that we are seeing happening with this government. I think that's probably a fair, incredibly 9-second version of what we spoke about. Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe not. It's online. Go look at it yourself. Just go to the YouTube channel and look up Ian Taylor and us, and we'll see it. Oh, here we go. Nate wants to reinforce the narrative. Seymour is the worst example of a human.
A couple of minutes
out.
had gone past since we reinforced that, so it's good. It's good.
Nate, you're gonna run out of cash if you keep doing that as we shut you out for the super chat, though.
And David, if you are watching and this bullying is too much, feel free to come on the show and we can discuss this.
We can bully you face to face. What are we going to say? Not what we're going to say. No?
Hey, that's usually something that I say, Pat, and you tell me to wind my neck in.
Wind your neck in. All right, let's move, Because Tama Potaka was on with Moana Maniapoto a couple of months ago.
Oh, this was a good interview.
It was. There is so much in there. You just need to go watch it for yourself. Actually, I'll try and remember to put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yes? No? Yes?
Yeah. I was going to put it in the chat.
Okay, you can do that as well, but I'll put it in the show notes,
thing.
which means they'll stay there for more permanently. There are 3 things we're going to talk about. The first thing is what was Tama's takeaways from Waitangi, what thoughts he had around Te Tiriti, especially that was how it was impacting within the government he was in, and Chhour, the fast tracking, his thoughts around that. So they're the 3 things we're going to cover off for tonight. And this is the first question. And the reason I wanted to show this question is really there's 2 things in here. The first one is the pause. At one point, just watch for that pause that Moana does. He answers the question and she just pauses. And you can just see in her head, she's going, that sounds like a load of bullshit to me. And then she vocalized it in a much more professional way than I just said right then. Also, the question avoidance around the referendum, and does he argue with David Seymour? It's the one question he then didn't answer. And you'll notice at that part of the question, what he brought out, Chhour, was what I would say, which is now a trope that they've got off their hairless leader and is now going around all of them. I don't know if you've noticed this, people, but all of these ministers are saying what I would say to you is, or what I would say is, and it's come straight from, I'm not saying it's come from him as in he's told them to do it, but this is what happens with leaders. Like you'll see if like a leader to a group or a church or a business has a moustache, all of a sudden these men will start popping up with moustaches all over the place. There is a mimicry which comes with leadership. And these guys are starting doing it to Luxon by using the same phraseology as he uses. So let's have a look at this first clip. And this first clip is Moana asking about his takeaways from Waitangi.
What was the key message you took from Waitangi?
The number one thing that maybe a couple of things that I see across those hui is an absolute focus and appetite for Māori for kotahitanga and the fabric of kotahitanga or unity to shine through in our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand. And what that means is not everyone must be the same, but we all have our own diverse iwi, our own diverse communities, our own diverse
aspirations. Might want to bring that up with David.
Within a kotahitanga fabric that's based on whakapapa and whanaungatanga foundations.
So I went to those hui too. There was a lot of kotahitanga and was mainly against the government.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's an impression that many people will have. But there's an aspiration that our whanaunga, our whānau, our hapu, our iwi and hapori have for that kotahitanga to encompass everybody in New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand your point there, because one of the big issues, of course, is the Treaty Principles Bill that's been championed by ACT. You were appointed a treaty settlement negotiator, so you know about the treaty. So do you end up having debates with David Seymour?
So there's the question, yeah? Do you push back against Seymour? That's the question. This is the question he doesn't answer.
Saying, no, hang on, what you're attempting to do here is to redefine the principles and therefore redefine the treaty.
As I said earlier on, the Treaty Te Tiriti o Waitangi is foundational for our country. That's my view.
It's not the question.
I think it's the view of many people, both Māori.
Is it the view of your party?
Oh, I think it is. And if you review our constitution, you'll see that Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or the Treaty of Waitangi, is acknowledged as the founding document of Aotearoa New Zealand.
There's no risk whatsoever that that bill will go beyond that select committee.
No, what I would say is that our Prime Minister has made several statements over the last couple of months that a referendum would be very unhelpful, that we are supportive as the National Party for the bill to be drafted by the ACT Party, to be taken through to first reading in the Select Committee.
Given your background and all you know, would that be a bottom line for you?
I'm very clear on my views on the place and space of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the Treaty of Waitangi in our society, past, present and future. And I'm willing to have a very reasoned and professional debate about that.
So, question number one, Chewy. It's a really interesting dynamic watching Moana with Tama, because on some level I get the sense that she's being quite respectful of him and he's been quite respectful on her. Probably a Māori thing going on there, that I don't sense that if it was like a David Seymour or a Chris Luxon would be the same kind of genteel polite. She's always polite, but there was she didn't, you watched the whole thing as well, tell me, I didn't feel her really go in at any stage and just really nail that down. Because, man, it's like the great question, do you push back against Seymour? Not really answered. Tell me again, what happens around, how does he get to say these things? How does he get to represent this issue with Māoridom within your government? You know what I mean? It was very polite and genteel, and that's Moana style, right? Polite and genteel sort of conversation with lots of good information, though. Your thoughts?
It's one of the things, and again, just to hammer it home, I do urge people to go and watch this whole interview. It's really, really interesting. One of the things that I love about Moana's interviewing style, as you've mentioned, is generally quite gentle and respectful. But what she doesn't say could fill a book. Yeah, those spaces, those pauses are just devastating, and you don't see that a lot with interviewers, because they're trying to rush or really hammer on, answer the question, which I also enjoy. But sometimes just sitting there and going, like, as you would have, so if you were talking to someone and they just said something completely out of pocket and you went, really? do you want to expand on that? It's just devastating. I think, you know, when Tama went, oh, what I'd say to you is this, and then a whole lot of fluff and burble about Te Tiriti. What an excellent opportunity he missed to just go, when this comes up to select committee or whatever, I am going to vote against it.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to actively vote against it. But he didn't.
Some people, I got a message from someone, because I don't know if you saw the write-up for this show, and I said in the write-up something like the Minister for Everything Māori, and some people go, no, that's a little bit rude, but the reason I said that is, let me show you right here. This is actually the show notes for Te Ao with Moana. It says, here's the Minister for Everything Māori. Well, almost National Minister Tama Potaka. So I kind of stole it off them. So just so you know, if you're wondering about my little bit of an edgy sort of a jibe there, it's
it's very true. Like, I mean, I have seen him speak, and there's chunks of that interview where I go, cool, I agree, 100%. That's I'm enjoying hearing this from you, and then I go, hang on, what party are you with?
Yeah, that's the point. Like, he says things you agree with, but you know that they're not going to have any influence. In fact, one of the questions we're not asking, not showing tonight, was that, I've got all my notes here, sorry, was that exact question where she asked, you know, who decides who gets the resource? She asked about institutional and colonial racism. She asked about how much influence do you have? And that's what you're saying. He might be saying the right things and he might be having the right answers, but if that doesn't then flow into legislation with his government, then for want of a better word, he's just something to hold up and say, see, we're there as well.
Yeah, I've seen him speak on stuff, and I, you know, as Kiwi Bird in the chat says, I don't hate him.
No,
you know, but certainly when he was stood up at Waitangi, I just felt like he was like, right, let's get our guy out there, take some flack, you know, and he spoke well there as well. But I just can't jive with the things that he's saying with the things that the rest of his party is saying, and the rest of the coalition partners are saying.
Yeah.
I'd be like, if you believe this, man, and this is what you're dealing with from your side,
Yeah.
I'd be fuming. I'd be throwing chairs through doors. This is why I'm not a politician. Very hard to work with.
Well, she did actually ask him at one stage something about the mongrel. Have you got the mongrel in you? So maybe they do need a few more chairs thrown through doors. I mean, they're looking for extra work for the public servants, fixing a couple of doors on the 7th floor. The 9th floor. That might be right. All right, let's have a look at another part of the conversation where they were talking specifically around te tiriti. And as you say, Chui, lots of the things that are said are the right thing. They're on the right page of the book. But then think about now, how does that translate to the cabinet? And what do we hear about that when it comes out the mouths of the likes of David Seymour?
Do you believe Māori ceded tino rangatiratanga?
No, we never ceded tino rangatiratanga. That's why it's preserved up in Article 2, or Te Tuarua, of the Treaty of Waitangi. And I know there's a lot of other documents as well that reinforce that sense of tino rangatiratanga, and also the movement that we talk about being mana motuhake.
How relevant is te tiriti now in 2024 when we are dealing with public sectors, when we're dealing with health, with justice, with education?
So someone who is bilingual, someone who has a passion for the Māori language, for te reo. And now this is the government getting rid of te reo in the public sector. So this is what I'm saying. His answer is not going to be the wrong answer, but then you have to attach that to who he is speaking on behalf of. And like you said, Chewy, he could say, I'm going to vote against this, but in some ways he can't, because part of the rules within cabinet is you have to vote with. You can't walk across the floor unless it's a conscious vote. So,
is it relevant?
I think it's more relevant than any time before, because I think that we're in a position.
So if it's more relevant than any time before, why is your party getting rid of it? So this is the disconnect.
As a country, to really gather around the ultimate aka matua of te tiriti o Waitangi, which is kotahitanga. That isn't for just for Māori, but that's for everybody. But ultimately, Māori are fundamental, te tiriti are fundamental to Aotearoa New Te Rene, is, was, and will be.
I know you've only been in here for 5 minutes, but when your kids, come here for your valedictory speech, what do you want to say to them?
I've tried to be the best Māori I can be and the best New Zealander I can be. And I can only be the best New Zealander I can be if I'm the best Māori I can be.
And what does being Māori in this place look like?
Is making sure that our identity is not only preserved, but it also evolves over time, and that we are acknowledged, or we are set as a fundamental part of the country's future.
How do you fight?
That's an interesting one, eh? We are set as a fundamental part of the future with a government who's trying to denounce your special place in this country and make you no different from the Canadian migrant that just came here. So what he's saying sounds right. What his government's doing is incongruent with this conversation that he's putting out there.
For that?
Well, I think people feel traumatised and people feel vulnerable. And that for me is a message that I must be a more strong advocate and contributor to Māori success.
It's been 2 years since we had our one and only conversation with the Prime Minister.
Oh, right.
Do you think you could put a word in for us with your boss?
I've put it all with his team.
Yeah, we'll just leave that one in there for the end. There's one more clip to come, but this is the vibe we're getting, and Chhour, you're saying it as well. It's like what he's saying, there's lots you'll agree with. What his government that he's a part of and a minister in is doing doesn't align with the words we're hearing. And that's a problem. And that means, this is a horrible term to use, but he comes across as a bit of a token Māori, because it's like we'll hold him up, but here he is. Now what impact can he have? Oh, none. Now, nothing he says is going to be taken into account. That's how it feels. Maybe I'm wrong, but if all those words he was saying in this interview were taken on board by the government, they wouldn't be doing the things that they're doing. And through this interview, one of the things that was frustrating is half the time, and Moana pointed it out as well, he was basically saying, well, we can't do it. I'm paraphrasing, but we can't do anything about it because that was a that was a coalition position agreement. So we had to agree to those terms and conditions. Like, well, dude, Mr. Luxon, if you open the door, you own it. Sorry, you can't. You don't, that's not a defence. Before we go to this last clip, Chewy, is there anything you want to add in?
I just want to circle back to that excellent question of like, what is it to be Māori in this place? Yeah. And I don't know if I'm just completely out of order here because I'm Pākehā. I don't know. But what I would think with the challenges that Māori have with how they have been treated and how the treaty is treated and how the government has done so much over so long to minimize Māori and minimize that treaty and that sort of thing, is you have to be big. You have to fight so much harder because the deck is stacked against you.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want to say. And like, even if his, you know, like we talk about, you can appreciate why someone is on the other side of the argument, you know, so why someone's on the right while we're on the left. There are clear and acknowledgeable reasons for doing that, and someone can argue those points, right? And that applies to Māori just the same as it does everywhere else. But he should be, in my opinion, making as much noise and ruckus for things that are important to Māori on the right that the Māori Party are doing and the Green Party are doing for issues for Māori on the left. And he's not. I mean, he's very new, but that shouldn't stop him either. There are a lot of new Māori MPs that are making a lot of noise, and like, if they're not going to give you space, then take it. Start throwing elbows. You know, force your way to the front. Like we've had over 100 years of finding out what white people want for this country. You know, don't be apologetic for it. Go for it. I like, as a white guy, I want to see it. I want to know. It won't bleed through by itself. I won't find it unless you're screaming it and making me understand it. Well, either side of the aisle that you are.
I think that's completely right. You're spot on. There's one chat here that I will highlight before we go on to the fast track conversation, and that's coming from Gold. Gold just says out of the blue, I heard this somewhere, David Seymour is apparently the worst human example of a human being. Sounds about right. Thank you for the super chat, Gold. It's just he heard that somewhere. I'm not sure where Gold heard that, but he heard it and he just wanted to pass it on.
Strange, interesting.
Okay, last clip we've got from Moana, and as I said, to be honest, I started watching and I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I found 10 possible clips. So it's really worth going and checking out for all the different questions and stuff that are in there. This is, and like, you might find a conversation and go, Pat, should I have shown this? I agree. I should have. We only got a certain amount of time. The part of the conversation, Chewy, they had about fast track consents and approvals, I thought was really interesting. It's about 3 minutes. Let us have a squiz at it.
One of the things that people are really concerned about is the new fast track legislation, a bill. And that'll put a lot of power in the hands of 3 ministers. And I see your faces popped up there, kind of a little bit muted.
Inset.
I mean, have they mucked up the design, or are you just kind of like a little bit cute?
Had you not seen that?
I had not seen that, but I oh my God, that's fucking hell.
Yeah, because you don't want to give this minister, like, you don't want to give this minister the full amount of presence, literally in the background if you could. You know, we'll keep going.
They mucked up the design, or are you just kind of like a little bit Kiwi there? What happens when, say, there's a push for permits and seabed mining? And Taranaki iwi have been, up in arms about that for many years.
Yes, my people.
Yeah. So what happens there?
Well, I think what you'll find is that over the last few years, a number of projects have really failed through RMA processes or conservation processes or other things. There's been a bit of bureaucratic molasses.
Now, the question is, if they've failed through the RMA process, does that mean there was good reason for them to fail? In other words, they could have been harmful to what they were trying to do. Or Have they failed purely because of bureaucracy and I dotting and T crossing? This is the question. Again, just like we were talking about earlier, why have they failed? Because if they've failed the RMA for bloody good reasons, in other words, reasons that would make the environment or where they're planning on being done less safe, then yes, they should fail. And if what you're saying now is you want to get rid of that, that means you're talking about unsafe practices that will now get through. It all comes down to the why. It all comes down to why did they fail? Did they fail for a good reason? Did they fail because of bureaucratic nonsense? You don't give us this part of the conversation, politicians, and we need to know it to need to be able to actually make an informed decision.
Describe it that way. So Ruakura in Hamilton East, the great city of Kirikiriroa, was a project that Tainui Group Holdings, the holding company for Waikato Tainui, was really pushing. And the council effectively said, well, hang on, that doesn't really suit the RMA and our needs. And so Tainui Group Holdings had to come to Wellington for 3 years, spend $3 million arguing for the Ruakura project to be put into the district plan. Now that's a great example where essentially the vitocracy has taken over. The bureaucratic molasses has made it harder for an iwi project to proceed.
It is a lot of power to leave in the hands of a very small group of ministers.
Yep.
Where are the checks and balances? Where is the compulsion to have iwi at the board, on the panels or anything like that? They're going to handpick whoever.
Well, I think there's a bit of water again to go under the bridge until we see the composition of the panels, but there are different stages, and I expect that both conservation as well as iwi Māori interests are given elevation in these processes.
How much input have you had into this bill?
I've been involved in, along with my office and the various agencies that are under my bailiwick, under my remit, in shaping and drafting and engaging on the appropriate wording for that bill.
So you're feeling confident that te tiriti rights and responsibilities of Māori and iwi, apart from treaty settlements, are not under threat?
Well, I'm feeling very confident that there is a pathway, a runway, a space for iwi to lead projects that seek consent and also be involved in projects.
So that seems to me what he's saying is, yeah, Māori can apply just like everybody else, which is a different question to what Moana is asking me. That's what I'm saying. He's basically saying, yeah, they can lead, they can apply just like everybody else. That's the summation of the feeling I've got from it. This has only got 12 seconds to go, then we'll cut them off.
Co-investors or maybe co-designers.
It's a different thing though.
No, I'm getting to that. Co-designers, and also to participate in projects that we are not investing in or investing through, but to have input, to have engagement through those processes.
There you go. So that's the 3 clips I'm going to show you. But yeah, so and as Moana pointed out, it was a different question. He was basically saying, of course Māori can be involved, where she was saying, as I understand it, it felt like she was saying, Māori have a special place in this planning process, thanks, because of te tiriti. So what about that part of it? And his response was, yeah, everyone can be involved, Māori as well. I'm paraphrasing. Shall we?
How much input do you have into this? Well, judging from my photo, about 20%.
But let me say this as well. The RMA stories, I'm sure that there are some cracker RMA stories out there where bureaucracy goes over the top. I always relate it back to a story, a SIFS story, that it used to be young people in families. SIFS, it's now whatever the name of it now is. Young people.
Oranga Tamariki.
Oranga Tamariki. It used to be SIFS. I had friends of mine who were farmers. Kids are bouncing off everything and climbing because they're farmers. And one of them fell off a trampoline and went to the hospital. Had a fracture in their arm and got posted up. Now this fracture, the doctor who saw the child sort of observed it as something that is often the kind of fracture an abused child gets, right? And so they had to notify SIFS. SIFS came out and did an investigation, which obviously was very stressful for the family, getting into their business, having to answer it. And then they deemed nothing was wrong and they went away. I remember talking to my friend about this who went through it. And I said to them, but think of the opposite. That seems to be the system working to me, because the doctor had a concern, nothing to do with you guys, was purely to do with what the fracture looked like. The doctor had to, by law, report it. They came out and they checked it out and they said nothing to see here. I know it would be stressful for anybody, but that to me is a system which causes you a headache, which causes you stress, which seems on some level you could go, oh, bureaucratic nonsense. Why do the doctor have to do? But it also then jumped through the hurdles to work. And the reason it was difficult that they had to jump through the hurdles for it to work was for the ones that don't work, jumping through the same hurdles would find them out. So whether the example he gave about the RMA was one of jumping through hurdles that they didn't need to, or the next application was going to be jumping through those hurdles to be found out, sometimes that's just how it has to go. Not giving the RMA a clean bill, not saying it's always fine. I'm just saying there's a system that sometimes is a headache, that sometimes feels bureaucratical, that sometimes feels like we're having to do these things we shouldn't have to, but they might not be about you. They might be about the person where they do have to do it. And sometimes on day one or in interaction one, you can't tell which is which. So you go through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's not fuck around with this fast track bill. It's not for the benefit of Māori. It's not going to speed things up for iwi based projects because they aren't paying for the lobbyists.
Yeah.
They're not the big multinational mining corps that are wanting to drill a hole in our national parks or mine the seabed
straight through the seals. They want to actually literally drill through the seals into the seabed.
Those guys have been gunning for this for years and years and years. They have been talking to Christopher Bishop the entire time. They've been sharing friendly emails and congratulatory high fives and advice and that sort of thing. It is, as I have said before, corruption. And that is why, if you haven't, and I've noticed people in the chat coming back to me going, Joey, I've done my submission. Great. If you haven't, do it. It ends tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like you have to and you can say that you want to be present and Zoom in, Skype in, whatever, and actually say your points. If you're confident to do that, you can absolutely do that as well. But yeah, please don't sit on your hands. Get onto this because this is literal corruption. It is something that will do decades upon decades worth of damage.
Yeah. And look, Nate's been generous tonight with his time, so it's probably only fair that we wrap up with him going, fuck, I'm angry now. Thanks for making it almost impossible for me to sleep. Think about us, mate. That's why we're up to 1
Do you know what
morning.
you can do since you're not going to sleep? You can make a submission.
Well done. Nice link, Chewy. All right, team. That's us for this week. Thank you so much for being with us. I've really appreciated you. Thank you for being a part of what we've been doing. Just as we're wrapping up, there's another super chat coming in. Lots of great contenders in this chat for the worst person in the world. Someone told me, and I have to agree, David Seymour is the worst person in the world. Shout out to Mr. Evans for your super chat. There you go. Okay, team. So we're done for this week. It's been great. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a very busy week. Remember, we're growing, and we're growing thanks to you. And one of the ways you can help us, not even going to try and pitch for a Patreon or anything, is actually just tell other people about us. Through this weekend, there'll be clips going out on my Twitter. There'll be clips going out on Facebook. If you haven't already liked the Facebook page, go and do it tonight. I think it's probably just Big Hairy News. You'll find us anyway. There'll be clips going out on YouTube as well. You can pass them all around. You can put them on your own social medias. Tell people about us. If you particularly like something that we've talked about, amplify it. Be our advocates. Tell people they should be listening to us and tell them why. That's actually a very good point. I keep asking the politicians to say why. You guys tell people why they should be listening to us. Be our advocates, be our advertisers, be our sponsors, and get us out there for more people to get more of this content as we continue to grow with you and because of you. All right, that's me, Chewy. Anything else?
No, right. I'm off to the Crown.
Everybody, thanks for all the aroha for us government workers who do care about our tamariki. They are our customers, and shout out to Because I Care for that super chat. Thank you. Because I care, we appreciate that. All right, yep, so Chewy's going out drinking hard. Yeah, you're Ubering in?
Yes.
Good on you. And I'm off to edit clips because that's what I do after the show. And you guys be safe through the weekend. Come back on Monday night at 9 p.m. for another edition. Make sure you bring a friend. Until we see you then, I will just say goodbye and hooroo to you.
Masiwa,